Hey guys, thank you so much for joining me on Their Fight Story. We have with us today a great professional fighter who has an amazing story to share with us. So I hope you guys are ready for a great interview. Thank you. Hey Denise, how are you?
Good, thank you. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to join me on Their Fight Story. I really appreciate it.
No problem. I really appreciate the opportunity that you're giving me to be heard.
Yes, you have an amazing story, and it's important to me that people hear it because you're not only a professional fighter, you're a mother, you're a sister, you're a daughter, and I want people to know who you are, just not in the cage. So just to start off, what inspired you to start fighting?
Um, it, gosh, that's a goes way back. It's kind of a long story. I never really dreamed I would fight back in my younger days. I did do a little bit of amateur boxing when about 25 years ago, and right before I got married, had my son. And I did Taekwondo. I was really into Taekwondo, and I got pregnant and had my son when I tested for my blue belt. I was 8 months pregnant. So
Wait, what?
I was 8 months pregnant when I tested for my blue belt in
Oh,
Taekwondo.
wow.
Yes, back then, and so I've always been into martial arts. I've always been really athletic. I've always been into training and doing something. And when I had my son, he kind of was just a part of Taekwondo too. And he did Taekwondo. He got his black belt, I think it was like 3 weeks before he turned 8 years old. And that was always something we did together, was the karate. And then outside of that, of course, I put him in gymnastics, and I put him in, and then he did his football and basketball, and there were, then karate at that time. When he got older, when he was doing the other stuff, the karate kind of became off and on for him, because we got more involved in the football and the basketball and the baseball and the track. I wanted him to experience everything and to experience life, and then tragedy happened and I lost him. And so I just got into a really bad place for a long time, and I couldn't go back to Taekwondo. I didn't want to go back to karate because that was our memories. That was something we shared, and I didn't want to take that away, and I didn't want to create new memories without him in that place. So I fell into a really deep depression, and I turned to drugs. I quit training. I quit doing everything. I lived inside my van for a long time because I didn't want a home. I didn't want a place that felt like that my son should be. I couldn't live in a house where I thought he should be in that room, where I'd walk in the door and it'd be empty. When I finally did get a house, I took off all the doors, and I would come home from work sometimes and I'd sit outside my house for hours. Sometimes I'd sleep on the front porch because I didn't want to walk into the emptiness, into the silence of not hearing a child inside. So it really put me in a place that nobody wants to be in. And I started going heavily on the prescription drugs that doctors were giving me per prescription. Drinking a lot. I started smoking. Anything to drown out what I was feeling. I just wanted to drown it. Several suicide attempts. I would overdose on the drugs. I would save some of the pills for 2 or 3 months and just take them all. And but for some reason, I'd be found the next day. I'd be rushed to the hospital. There 3 different times when I was in ICU, they did tell my sister that I wasn't going to make it, that there was no way, and if I did come out of it, I'd be brain dead because I took so many drugs. I just didn't want to live. I was done with life, and in my head, I was going to die, and I didn't need anyone or anything, and all I wanted to do was just crawl inside a hole and die and be with my son. And my sister even told me, she said she felt really bad because she said that she used to pray that I would die in my sleep and wake up with my son, because she knew that I couldn't live without him, because we were we were sewn to the hip. You know, I became a single mom when he was about a year old. And so it was just the two of us. And then anyways, there was, over the period of the next 5-6 years, that's what my life was. I was just a mess, and a really, really deep mess. And then one day my mom called me and she told me that my sister had cancer. And at that time they said that she only had 3 or 4 months to live, that it was really super bad. And before then, all I thought was, I've got nothing to live for and I've got nothing more to lose. And when I got that call, it reminded me that I do. Now I had to be strong for her. So that's what got me off I had to wake up. I had to find another way to get rid of this deadness that I had inside. I mean, when he died, I died. That's all there was to it. I died. And I had to find a way to get rid of that. And so I started training MMA. And when I would get inside the cage, you have to say, so to speak, I felt alive. And it was the only time that I felt alive. When I was getting, and not so much when I was getting beat up. I would sit there when I would train sometimes. I mean, my coach would yell at me because I would just sit in the corner and let them hit me, boom, 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 over and over and over again. And I didn't want to leave that spot. The more they hit me, the harder they hit me, the more alive I felt. It's almost like, you know, when people cut themselves to feel pain, it was that same kind of feeling. That if all of a sudden I'm like, okay, I haven't felt anything in 6 years, and now all of a sudden I'm feeling again. And even if it was pain, I was okay with that.
So you would prefer that physical pain over the internal pain that you were feeling?
Yes, it changed. It gave me something to feel, because I was feeling nothing. I felt dead, you know. And then, you know, of course it changed. I started getting better. I started training more. Time went by. I started healing a little bit because I went off the drugs completely. And I think being on the drugs too so much kept me in a place. It helped keep me in that dark place, because, you know, doctors prescribe depression drugs to people who are depressed, but those drugs are for mental depression. You know, people with those not to lessen the importance of that, but that wasn't what was wrong with me. It was something in my heart. You know, like the very night my son died, I grabbed the security officer's gun in the hospital and tried to shoot myself. And they put me on suicide watch that night. They 5150 me that night, shipped me off 300 miles away without even telling the people why I was there. When my son had just died. And couldn't have any visitors. They locked me up in a square little room to keep me on suicide watch. And the next
For how
day,
long?
well, my dad and mom had to fly down there, my mom and dad, and my dad, they weren't going to let me out because they said I was still depressed. And they're like, her son just died. What is she supposed to do? And he said, well, I got her on medication, so she should feel better in the morning. And when I got out, when he interviewed me in the morning, he asked me, he says, how do you feel? I mean, I put you on some medication last night. You should feel better. And I looked at him, I said, is my son still dead?
Exactly.
You know, and even though I was drugged up, but then, you know, I realized if I want to get out of here, I got to pretend to be happy. And
Yeah.
so I told him, I feel much better, you know, thank you for the help, you know, because it was the only way to get out of there and get to make my son's funeral. So.
Oh my gosh, I can't.
Yeah. And it was, and the thing is, they didn't even, they didn't even tell people why I was shipped down there. They 5150 me to this place to where, I mean, what do they do with 5150 people? That, I think that's usually like for crazy people or people that are mentally off or something like that. I don't know. But there were other people in there that are normal, but every time you commit suicide or try to commit suicide, that's where they send you. But, which, you know, I would like to change that to a different place for people that are not crazy, but people like that, because that has never happened to me before. Didn't tell anybody why I was there. So they put me in this room when I first get there. It's like 2 o'clock in the morning. They strip me naked, pat me down, treat me like I'm some kind of criminal. You know, they pat me down to make sure I don't have anything on me that I'm going to kill myself, and then lock me up in this little room on a cement floor and a pad with nothing. And then I'm staying there all night by myself on the night that I lost my son.
And that's supposed to make you feel better?
That's supposed to make me feel better. You know, fortunately they drugged me up so I fell asleep, but it was like, I was, you know, that was just wrong. You know, yeah. It was just wrong. If anything, that's just going to make you more depressed or more worse, you know. It was not to throw that in there. I don't know why I did. It just kind of.
No, it helps. It helps to understand because you're not only dealing with the death of your son, you're also dealing with the fact that you were basically being punished because of the way you were feeling. And then they lock you away. And now on top of that, you have to deal with, am I going to make it on time to say
my funeral?
Yeah.
Exactly. Now I got to pretend to be okay in order to get out of here so I can go say goodbye to my son and bury him. You know, which is, you know, hard enough to deal with. And I wasn't, you know, it was, we'll go on. But that was what got me originally. It was about 6 years after my son died that I started training MMA. And then I started using MMA as a way to bring awareness. Like my last hometown fight, we sold over 500 t-shirts that said "In loving memory of Austin," and all the proceeds went to a group, an organization that helps with child suicide and choking game prevention. So I used the fights in order to raise money for those events and to bring awareness, because people think that it can't happen to them. You know, my son was the most athletic kid. He broke school records. His career, he would have, and I'm not just saying this because he's my son, everybody said this, he would have gone pro in any sport he wanted to be in. You know, when he competed in martial arts at 5 years old, he won in forms in the 4 and 5-year-old division, in forms and in fighting. And then he took 8-year-old and under grand champion. He beat the 8-year-olds too. In gymnastics, when he was 8 years old, he competed. He won in his division and in the 12-year-old and over division. In track, at 6th grade, he broke 8th grade school records. At football, he could throw a football like there was no tomorrow. And people think this only happens to bad kids. Yeah. And in reality, if you do the research, it's not the bad kids that it happens to. Bad kids seem to have a strength of not caring about certain things. And good kids don't carry that. Life can be so good for them at times that they can't handle or don't know how to process when something goes wrong. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does make sense.
You know, and people don't realize that. And kids will act out without understanding the permanency of their actions.
Yes.
That's honestly what I feel what happened to my son. As far as like, you know, I mean, there's choking game victims. I don't know if you've heard of that. And then there's suicide victims, but 98% of choking game victims go down as suicide. But the thing is, whether it was choking game or suicide, nobody really knows. There's no know. You know, I found my son hanging from his bedroom doorknob. He had a belt around his neck and it was tied to the top. He was on his knees leaning forward. And that's why when I finally moved into a house for the first 3 years, I took all the doors off the house, because every time I saw a door,
Yes.
I saw my son, and I couldn't get that image out of my head. And, you know, whether it was, I know he had in the past, because some of the kids mentioned that they had played the choking game, but with the research that I've done with all the choking game victims, there was something that happened that day that upset the child.
Yeah.
And, you know, you live with that because you don't know. You don't know what really happened, and you don't know what they're thinking, and you don't know. All you know is sometimes kids act out and they don't understand the permanency of their actions. You know, they don't, I don't think, was Austin's intentions to die? I don't think so, no, not in any way whatsoever. Where all these kids that I've read about and studied, I have over 500 people on my Facebook that are part of a choking game support room, and they all lost their kids in the same way that I lost my son. And they were all kids like my son, athletic, smart, happy, close relationships with their parents. And in a moment, in a bad moment, they made a wrong choice. You know, and dealing with that and living with that, you carry that for your whole life. And I just hope that everywhere I go and everything I do, I can save somebody's kid from doing that, or bring some parents' attention to the fact that to help change that effect on them. You know, maybe I don't know. It's just one of those things that you live with forever.
Yeah, you don't have a clear answer. I have a friend who experienced something similar, and that hurt me. You know, I never got the opportunity to meet the young boy, but it hurt me because just like your son, a good kid, very athletic, extremely talented. Like, I'm like, wow. And all that comes to mind is, and this is just my opinion. I mean, I mean, it's just my opinion. I feel like these children, they're so good that they honestly don't know that there's a bad side to people. They don't understand that there's evil, because like when we do things based on how we are, you know? Same thing as the kids. They do things based on how they are, but they don't understand that people have malicious intent. They're not always looking for the best.
Right.
So some people are jealous and will tell them, hey, do this. Or maybe they did something, you know, that was like embarrassing. And then you have another bully telling them, I can't believe you did that. Oh, you should just end everything. Oh my God, you think your parents are gonna forgive you? And in reality, it's nothing. It's something that it's like, really? Like, okay, we'll get over it, we'll move on. But they're such good kids that
They live in that moment.
they live in
Only
the
the
moment.
moment. Yeah, they don't see before and they don't see after. They're only thinking about that moment right now, what they're hearing, what you just said,
Yeah.
what he just told them, and how they feel at that moment. They don't think about moving forward. They don't think about, well, in 10 minutes this will be over, or tomorrow we'll be forgetting them, and tomorrow I'm going to Disneyland, or
Yes.
they forget. And only thing that they live in is that very moment. And that is the most important thing that people need to realize, is kids live in the moment they are standing in. No matter how good their life is or bad, you know.
Yeah. It doesn't, that's why I always, every time I see a child, even an adult, I'm always smiling at them, because I don't know what internal battle they're going through. And it could be nothing to us, but for them, it's a lot. It's too
Right.
much pressure. And I think a smile will change somebody's life. So ever since my friend told me that, I'm always, you know, I was always cautious of what I said to people, but I'm always smiling at somebody because I don't know
You never
what
know
their
what
plans are.
all they're facing. Yeah.
Yeah.
And MMA, I guess after that, it really became, especially when I'm in the cage, when I'm in a fight, you know, I feel alive in that fight. I feel especially a hometown fight where everybody went through everything with me, where everybody knew Austin, where everybody knew didn't think I was going to make it. I have the most support at my hometown fights. I mean, they're usually sold out within a month, before the fight even happens. And the crowd and the energy that I feel is going to be hard to let go of. That it draws me because of the way I feel inside, being so dead, and then that changes and that lifts my spirit, and gives me a reason to keep going, and it gives me something else to look forward to, and something, it makes me feel alive, if that makes any sense.
No, it makes perfect sense, believe me. A question for you. Have you ever just been in a fight and just not even fought, just stood there, just taking the beating just because you wanted to feel alive, either in the beginning when you first started, or when you go in the cage, you actually go to fight?
When I'm in the cage, I actually go. When I'm in a fight. When I'm sparring, there are several times when I just stay there and I just let the person beat on me. And especially when I first started training, that was consistent. I mean, there were times when even my coach would make me stop, and not even let me get back in until I'm like, until you got to fight back. But in a cage, no, I've never got in there and let them do whatever. I've always, I do love fighting back. And it lets so, this is where I can release.
Yes.
I can release everything in that cage. I can let it all out. I can hit as hard as I want to. I can kick as hard as I want to. I can throw as hard as I want to, and I can get hit. And that's the best feeling in the world too. And then this is hard to explain. Yes, it's the best thing in the world. You can hit me as hard as you want to, and I am not going to go down. I am not going to go down because I don't feel it. I do not feel it. It's like the fights that I have lost is because of my grappling. They cannot beat me on standing up, and everybody knows that. They have to take me to the ground to win, because that's my weak point. My stand-up skills, you will not win. I can out-punch you, I can out-kick you, I can out-fight you, I can boom, 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 just because I can stand there and place and not throw a punch, and you can punch as hard as you want and as often as you want, and I ain't going anywhere because it makes me feel good. I like that feeling. It's if it wasn't for something that I do need to win, I would get in the cage and just stand there and let them do it, because, and I don't know if that's just because of that coldness inside, or that anger, or the hurt of what I've been through. But I have to admit, I do love that feeling. That's weird and hard to say. I hope
it's not, because that's something you have control of.
Yes.
So it's not weird to say, because you're the one who controlled the outcome. What happened to you before, you had no control over, but this you do. So you are gonna make it. You know what I mean? You're amazing. Like, you were so inspirational. I mean, when did you first start fighting, so people understand?
Okay, my first fight, or when did I first start training? Because I fought only 6 months after I first started training.
Oh,
so it was my first fight, really? Yes.
Okay.
And I fought a girl that had already had 6 fights under her, and she outweighed me by 15 pounds. And I did win that fight.
You won that fight?
I did win that fight. Yes, that was my very first fight, and literally, and actually, she was beating the crap out of me. Actually, I mean, I was taking it. I was fine with it, and I was punching back. But she was bigger. She had longer arms. She didn't come in weight. She came in, like, I weighed in at 112, and the weight was supposed to be 115, and I walk around about 112, so I didn't have to cut. Now I fight at 105. I learned my lesson on that one. But anyways, I weighed in at 112 with my clothes on. she ended up weighing in at 123. And that was her cutting all night too. So I
Wow.
know by the time she got in the cage, and they even asked me, do you want to cancel this fight? And I said, no, I don't want to cancel. And so I got $300 of her purse money. I said, oh, sure, I'll take it. You know, I mean, either way, I'm still making something out of it. And the first round, I thought that was my very first fight. So literally the very first round, all I was thinking is, when I walked in and I heard the click on the door, I thought, did he just lock that door? What if I want out? He did not just lock that door. And I'm looking, that's what was going in my head.
Yeah.
And so when we went at it, it was pure survival mode, because it was no skill. It was on either part, not even hers. I mean, for someone that was, you know, seasoned a little bit, she was just boom, boom, just crazy fighting. And I was just fighting back as much as I could just to survive. And but she was getting me more because she had longer arms. But I was still pushing her backwards the whole time. I mean, I was pushing her backwards. And then the second fight, when we went to touch gloves, she acted like she wanted to touch gloves, and instead she hit me across the face, because I just went like that to touch gloves, and she broke my nose right off the bat, and blood started pushing out, just boom, scoring boom, all over the place. And it made me mad. And I was like, oh my God, they're going to stop the fight because I'm bleeding too much, because my uniform was covered with blood and everything. I'm like, they're going to stop the fight. They're going to stop it. I did not want them to stop this fight. So all I did is I went in, I started punching. And as I was punching, I reached around, grabbed her with a guillotine, pulled her down on the down, and choked her out.
That's awesome.
And she was so mad, she threw her gloves off, slammed them on the ground, and walked out of the cage. She didn't even focus it. But it was a blessing what she did, because it pushed me to the point where I did not want them to stop the fight. And I was so worried that they were going to stop it, because the blood was coming out so much that I ended it before they could. So it was kind of a cool experience. And then I was
How did you feel throughout every single part of it? Like how did you feel like when you had said when they closed the door and you felt, but how did it feel knowing that you were doing your first fight, that you were basically doing it in honor of your son? Everything that you do is in honor of him. How did it feel to have your very first fight in memory of him, dedicated to him, leading the way? You know what I mean?
It felt like, you know, because I was scared. I really was. When I first walked in there, I felt scared, and I didn't think that I would feel that, you know, being everything I've been through, being that, you know, but when you spar, you don't spar with MMA gloves, you know, so basically it was the first time I ever got hit with an MMA glove, you know, really hard. You know, we spar hard when we wear boxing gloves, but we don't spar hard when we wear MMA gloves. And, you know, being how I always feel like, just, you know, there's so many times when I just take the punches and I enjoy it, but that's always with boxing gloves. I never did that with an MMA glove, you know.
So you didn't enjoy it.
Let me tell you, it's different. And the first time I felt that, in my head for a moment, all I thought was, oh crap, what am I doing in here? And then I kind of told myself, you know what, you know why you're in here. Just keep going. And I just let everything out. And it felt like things were lifted off my shoulders almost. I felt for the first time in my life, all I ever think about all the time sometimes, and what's always in my head, because this is that night that I lost my son. That image that I found, the 30 minutes I spent trying to save his life before help finally got there, trying to make him breathe, him turning blue in my hands, he turned cold in my, you know, I mean, the worst thing in the world for a mom is not being able to save your kid and to feel their hands slowly turn cold, and you can't get that out. You live with it. When I'm in that cage, I didn't think of that.
Yeah.
All I focused on was this. And that was, for the first time, there was relief of that kind of pain. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And that was the only time. that there is relief of that kind of pain. Even when I'm sparring and I'm letting myself be hit, it's because of what I'm feeling. It's because of what I'm thinking. It's because of what I need. But when I was in that cage, all I thought about was that fight and that moment. And for the first time, I could live in the moment without thinking about that night, without that going in my head, that part of it going in my head. And especially that was, I mean, that particular fight, my first fight wasn't, I mean, everybody knew about what happened to my son. And so I think everybody was kind of in my favor, even though it was away and it was not my hometown. But it wasn't one of the ones that were where money was dedicated to the organization that helps this. But my hometown fights have always been that way. And there were a couple of out of town fights where they put a lot of emphasis on raising money. They put all the money towards the choking game organization, which why I say choking game, but it's not just choking game, it's also suicide prevention. You know, they combine both the efforts, the organization that they give all that money to. And several people who have asked me to fight for them in other places have brought me in as their own, like as if it was my hometown, in order to raise awareness and to help other kids and other people. And what's really nice is like, even one of them, it was I think it was like my third fight. It was they had all the kids from the gym there that I never even knew, but all of them wore the same colors that I wore, and they walked me out. And it was just, yeah, it was, I had 30 kids behind me that I never met, never had met in my whole life, but they were there to support the cause. And all the money they raised for that fight went towards that cause. And so it was just, I lost that fight. But it didn't matter. Yeah. It didn't matter. It was a beautiful night. And, you know, and I always, of course, we hug afterwards, because the other fighter also knows why they're there and what this is about and everything like that. So that I like, you know, I really like. And what I really want to hope to do in the future, because I'm 55. You asked that, I didn't answer. 5 years old. My first fight, I was 49. Okay.
49. I thought it was 40. For some reason, I thought 43.
No.
Oh my God, that's awesome.
No, I started training. I was 48 when I started training. I think 43 is when I lost Austin.
Oh, I knew 43 was something. I'm sorry.
Yeah. And then I started the training, the MMA, when I was 48, and 6 months. You know, I started right kind of around July, the middle of summer. I turned 49 in December, and I had my first fight in January. So, and that was my amateur fight, my first amateur fight. And so that's how old I was. Now I'll be 56 in December. I was scheduled to fight on May 4th. That would have been my first fight after 2 years, because I had the knee surgery, and I had just started recovering from that. And I tore the meniscus in my knee. It was a full meniscus tear, a full ACL tear, and a small fracture across the front. But it took me, I was injured for about 6 months with that before I could afford to have the surgery. So it was a kind of a long period of where I wasn't able to fight. And then I had the surgery. Then it was 8 months after that before I I started training again as soon as I can, but not like I couldn't do jiu-jitsu. I couldn't trust somebody putting the weight on it. You know, certain things I just couldn't do. I couldn't go live for a long time. So I just started training again, doing that. And then the COVID-19 thing ruined the May 4th fight.
Yeah.
And that was going to be a hometown fight. They wanted to bring me back, and you know, do it all again. And I was looking forward to that. Now I'm getting older.
Never stopped you before.
I know, it never stopped.
You can't use that excuse. It never stopped you before. No. No.
I know. I will probably, if they, you know, the chance comes, I don't know when they're going to have the hometown fights again. They're waiting for things to clear up. I will probably do that one more time. And then my focus is jiu-jitsu, and I want to start, you know, I've never done gi jiu-jitsu, so I started doing gi jiu-jitsu because I want to get belted and get promoted, you know, because they don't have that in no gi, which I hate gi jiu-jitsu, by the way. I hate it. I do. I don't know why. People grab my clothes, you know, like
Yeah.
and I want to go, let go, or I'm going to punch you in the face. That's how I feel about it. But anyways, I want to start competing in jiu-jitsu,
Mhm.
and I want to use that same tool and maybe somehow do that in order to raise money to help prevent other things from happening to kids like this. Or the most important thing is parents. Parents need to be aware that it can happen to them.
Mhm.
If it can happen to me, I'm telling you, it can happen to anybody. Okay, because Austin and I were the closest, and he was the happiest, and he was the best kid that had the whole world in the palm of his hands. Yeah. All right, what's the next question?
You know what? How do you feel the knowledge is out there for suicide prevention, for
I
the
don't think
choking
it's
game?
out there enough. I don't, because I get a new child in my group. There's a new child that dies every week. There's another kid that happened to every week. For the last 10, 11 years, every week I've been getting a new child. It's not lightening up. It's not stopping. It's not, and I don't know if we're fighting the wrong fight, or because there are a lot of these, and I don't mean this in a bad way, because that's what a lot of the parents are just focused on, the choking game and not suicide prevention. And nobody really knows for sure what it was. Nobody knows for sure what it was they were thinking at that moment, what they were trying to do, or they were just in the moment acting out. Nobody knows for sure. And so sometimes I think if we are just focusing on the choking game, then in that reality, we're not focusing on the real problem, and we're not saving lives. Or if we're just focusing on child suicide and most of it is the choking game and people aren't aware of it, then at the same time we're doing that same problem, you know. So and honestly, I think people need to focus more on child suicide. I do, because I mean, it's like, I think, I can't remember now what it was. I mean, I posted on the video I made of my son that it was like the third leading cause of death. Every 3 days, a child between the ages of 10 and 13, a parent will find hanging in his bedroom. Every 3 days. And that's a young age.
Yes.
For a child. And it's um you know, any death of a child is beyond imaginable.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And hard to deal with. But on top of that, to find your child that way and to try to save them, and you know, you can't get rid of that, no matter how many years go by. I mean, it's been 12 years for me. It's been 12 years, and sometimes I think, God, you know, I mean, it's not to say that I'm not happy. You know, you see this and you think, gosh, she's miserable. I'm sorry for her pain. And I don't mean to make people feel that way, because I'm not. I am in a good place. You know, I train, I go to jujitsu, I go to boxing, I go to work, you know, I smile, I laugh, you know, but I do always carry that memory. And, you know, and then there's always, like, my son, when he died, he was wearing his basketball uniform. So, and the basketball uniform is pretty common. Most all schools have the same color of uniform. So every time I see a kid, like, I work at Costco, so I see a lot of kids that come in, and during basketball season is the hardest time for me, because kids are wearing that uniform. And it's the first image that I see in my head when I see somebody that, especially if they look similar to my son and they're wearing that same uniform. It's the first image that I see in my head. So it's people don't realize, you know, and I get this a lot. Well, just think of the good times. Just think of the good. Trust me, I think of the good times. I always remember the good times we had. I do, but it does not take away from the bad.
Yes.
It doesn't take away from the bad. And actually that goes back to MMA, because the only thing that takes away from the bad is when I'm in that cage. That's the only time I don't think about it. That's the only time I am free of that pain, is when I'm in that cage. And that people don't realize that. You know, it's like, it's either that or take a gun to my head.
Yeah.
Which would you prefer? So it's just one of those, you know, one of those things. And I went through some the first 6 years, like I said, there was a time when I was homeless. There was a time I lived in my van. There was a time I lived at the lake. There was a time that I took 6 weeks. I bought a pass on an Amtrak train for $500. You can get a pass for a month, and you can just go on it. You can get off where you want, get on where you want, get off where you want, get on where you want. And I did that. And I almost didn't come back. I almost thought, you know what, I'm just going to do this forever. I'm just not going to, because I didn't have to deal with reality.
Yeah.
I didn't have to deal with life. And it was a nice feeling. But I would have ran out of money, eventually. Fortunately, work was really patient with me. Costco was a good job. They knew Austin, they knew me. And because it took me almost 2 years before I could come back to work. And they held my position for me. They were patient. Even when I did come back to work, there were times when I'd fall apart. There were times when I didn't show up for work. There were times when I would try to kill myself so I didn't show up for work the next day. They could have fired me over and over and over again, but they didn't. They didn't. They were patient, and they would call me up sometimes like, you need to come in and sign papers. And literally I would tell them, all I need to do is crawl in a hole and die. And I'd hang up on the managers. But they dealt with it. They were really good company, and they stood by me no matter what. So I'm grateful that, they were able to do that. And my sister, back to my sister, is cancer free.
Oh, that's awesome. Great news. Thank you.
She made it. And let me tell you though, it was a really good 3 months. When I found out she had cancer, I took the leave of absence, and we live like you're dying. We did that. We went surfing in the cold. Oh my God, the weather was so cold, but we got to do this because we don't know if we're going to do it again.
Yeah.
We had so much fun. But she is the real fighter. My sister is a real fighter. She stood by me no matter what. She always stood by me. She came and took me out of the hospital every day. The doctors told her that she would find me dead one of these days. They wanted to prepare her for it. But she never gave up. She was always there for me. And when the doctors told her about the cancer, she said, it's not going to happen. I'm not going anywhere because we've already lost too much. And I'm not doing that again. I'm not doing that to my sister. So she went through 4 months of chemo and radiation every day. And she never stopped working one day, because even the doctors told her, you need to stop. You need to stop. And she goes, if I stop, it will get me. I'm not stopping. So she went on her lunch. She would take like a 2-hour lunch, and she would go to her chemo and radiation, and she'd go back to work. Never a day. When she was in the hospital having her operation to get the tumor out, the tumor was like this big in her colon. They told her she'd be in the hospital for 3 to 4 weeks. She was out in 3 days and back to work on day 4. But so she is the fighter. My sister's the fighter. There's nobody as strong as she is, and I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for her.
I think being a fighter runs in your family at this point. Seriously, it's not, I think it's maybe she's the red corner and you're the blue corner, but you guys are both fighters. There's not one over the other. You know what I mean? So, you guys are a great team, and
Yeah,
I'm
she'd
glad.
come to my fights. Even when they were in Texas, she'd come to my fight. She's like, I wanted to throw my chair.
That's awesome.
But I'm grateful for my family, my parents too. They're really good. So
that's awesome. As for what you say, that people see you as a miserable person, nobody sees you. No,
that's what I don't want people to see. Is I don't want them to look at me and go, oh, I feel sorry for you. I feel sorry for you. I don't. And sometimes I don't post. I'll stop posting like some pictures of my son or something, because I think people overreact, or I'll say things like, I can't wait to see you. I hope it's tomorrow. And they think, oh my gosh, she wants to kill herself, and no, that's not what I mean. I miss my son. And yes, I need to be with him tomorrow. Great.
But I personally don't see you as miserable. I see you.
Good.
I see you as a mother who's strong, who went through a horrible ordeal, and after a certain amount of time decided that, you know what, I'm gonna do something in honor of him. I'm gonna make.
He's so happy right now. He'd be so proud. He'd be like, yeah, that's my mom kicking butt.
Yes, I'm sure. I'm sure every time you're in that cage, he's right there saying, "That's my mom. I got your back." You're doing a great job.
Well, thank you. And you know what I also really appreciate you saying, because I don't get this a lot. I see you as a mother. You're a mother.
Yes.
Because I don't have a son anymore, so people don't see me as a mom.
No, you are a mother.
So, and that's another thing that I like, because I meet new people that never knew I was a mom. So I try to keep him alive in that sense too, because I want people to know my son. I want people
Yeah.
to know I am a mom. I'm always
Yes.
going to be a mom. I'm always going to be Austin's mom in that. And my heart is never going to change. Never.
It's never going to change. That's why I want you to keep posting, even if you're just posting for me. Just post, post all that stuff, because I mean, let me tell you, I went hunting for that video, Forever 12. I mean, one day
Whoa.
I saw it and then I lost it in the thread, and I'm like, no, where are you? And then I found it, and then I'm like, okay, okay, you know what I mean? Because it gives.
I wish everyone would watch that video, because this is the thing, is when you tell people about suicide prevention, or you tell people about the choking game, they like, oh, I'm sad, I'm sad, I'm sad. But when they watch that video, they put a face to it.
Yes.
They put a child to it. They put a life to it. And all of a sudden, it becomes more real. And then they see him, how happy he was, the life that he had, the love that we shared, his personality. And then that changes everything. Then they go home and they hug their kids. And then watching that video is what makes it reality.
Yes.
And that's what I hope people will see, you know, in that video. I don't put it out there to try and make people feel sorry for me. I try to make people realize this is reality, and this is what you could lose, and this is what you need to do in order to, you need to pay attention to every detail of your kid, every detail, and hope and pray that it doesn't happen to you, because it could.
Yeah. I'm gonna, maybe this is gonna sound bad, and I apologize. I've never felt sorry for you. I've always felt like I feel your pain. You know what I
No,
mean? Which
that's
is,
not at all.
and it might come out like, oh my gosh, she doesn't feel sorry. And I don't, because I feel your pain, and I don't understand what you went through. But as a mom, and I try to put myself in your shoes, I don't want to be in your shoes, because, even anybody who's gone through what you've been through can't stand up the way you do, can't hold their head up like you do, because you're making a change. You are making sure that what happened doesn't happen to somebody else. And what you're doing is you're reminding people of this young boy who was an amazing young boy, not forgetting that who he is. And if they've never met him, hey, I'm going to introduce you to my son. And he is making a change in other people's lives. And you are doing it. You are allowing his memory to change other people's lives, and hopefully change, the mindset of one child that is thinking of maybe doing something like that. Because people don't see that there's the other side. Like, yes, it's a temporary fix, but then there's a long pain and long.
People think that you get over stuff like that, and you don't. You move through it. And it took me, I mean, I wasn't, and people say that too. I mean, I'm strong. I wasn't strong the first 6. I mean, I tried to die. I overdosed. I did things maybe in a way I shouldn't, because I could not wrap my head around reality.
Mm-hmm.
So I drowned out that part of my life. I don't even remember my life those first 5 years. There's so many things that I did. There's friends of mine that told me I went to Seattle with them for 3 days. I don't even remember doing that. They were showing me pictures, and I was like, I don't even remember being there.
Disassociated.
Because I was just such in a bad place. And don't feel bad about saying that, not feeling sorry for me. That is actually a deeper understanding. That's kind of like what my sister said. She said that she felt really guilty because she prayed that I would die in my sleep and wake up with my son. And all I thought was, you know what, that is unconditional love right there. You're seeing my pain. You're seeing how bad I hurt, and you're seeing what would make me truly happy. And so you are wishing what you felt at that time might be best for me. instead of having this slow process of eventually, because the doctors told her she's going to do it one day. I'm just going to prepare you that it will happen. I mean, they told her that. And so she was thinking, she was putting her own self aside, what she wanted, and putting what was best for me.
Yeah.
So it's and I don't and that's I don't want people to feel sorry for me. I want people to see that other side the way you do.
Yes.
It's important to me that people see that, because I'm not putting, I literally will stop posting sometimes because I think people are starting to think that maybe I want that kind of attention, or people will think or people think that they are feeling too sorry for me, or or they think that I'm in a really bad place when I'm not in a really bad place. I'm just sharing. And also too, but another thing they don't see, because there's so many mothers that are going through the same thing that I go through, and they don't comment on these posts because there's a lot of them are just so they're still in that bad place, but they'll send me messages because they'll say, I never have the words to express how I feel, or they're afraid to express how they feel because they're afraid of the reaction that they're going to get from others. So they go, I so appreciate what you said, because it makes me know that what I'm feeling is normal, because I'm not alone. And that helps them go through another day, because they know that I went through it. They know where I'm at now, and they know that the pain they're feeling is not wrong, that it's real, and that it's okay. And it's not something that I'll be honest, the pain has lessened over the years.
So
Yeah, but it's always there.
mm-hmm.
It is always there. And I don't truly think there's a possible way of, well, I don't think there'll ever come a time, or you know what, I don't even want there to ever come a time where I don't feel anything, because to me that would mean I lost that love for my son. Because when you love someone and they're not around, you miss them.
Yeah.
It's not a bad thing. And so I'm always going to have that pull. I'm always going to miss him, because he's not going to, until I'm with him again,
Mm-hmm.
that's the way it's going to be. You don't get over that. That doesn't go away. It's something that you just have to learn to live with and carry your whole life.
Yes. It's not something that we want. But it's very important that you share your stuff, because, you could have 10 people that are annoyed with it, but you know what they have? They have an easy button that can say either unfollow or remove themselves from your thing, because you don't want to miss out on that one mother, one child, one father that needs to see it and needs to hear it.
Right.
It's better to have, save one life than to, make 10, 15 people happy because they're not seeing it.
It's like, sometimes I compare it to like people that are, people that are like in the war, they go through a hard time, and they too suffer from PTSD. And that's also something that parents that go through, they go that same kind of period of what they saw. And then there's some people come back from war and they've lost a leg, they've lost an arm, they've lost some kind of limb. And you know what? And that's the difference between them and me. People will always see that they don't have an arm. They will always see that they don't have a leg, and people always respond accordingly to that and cater to those needs. They don't see the pain that you're feeling when you lose a kid. You don't see that. And when you lose a limb, you always have that scar. You don't ever recover. Your leg doesn't grow back. You'll never run again the same. You'll never walk again the same. But you will learn to walk again. You just learn to do it differently.
Exactly.
And you learn to do it with that limp, or you learn to do it with that scar. You learn, and you always have that reminder there. And everybody else can see that reminder. And, when I see people come in with stuff like that, like to Costco and stuff like that, I'm always more helpful towards them, or, more concerned with their needs or things like that. But when people have that scar inside in their heart, the world doesn't see that.
No.
They just think you should be completely normal, and you're not. That's a scar that you carry inside, in depth, that people aren't aware of until you share it.
Yeah. It's beautiful.
Well, thank you.
But at the same time, it's like a rose. It's a beautiful rose, but you had all these thorns, and you had to go through all these difficult steps in your life. And I just thank you for being here, for being who you are, never ever forgetting your son. I mean, you probably take being a mother to a whole nother level, because you keep honoring him every single day, and you make sure that what happened changes and benefits other people. So you're not being selfish. You are taking something and giving back, even through your pain, because nobody does that. Even through your pain, you keep doing it. So I just want to thank you, thank you. And if you can't hear me one more time, thank you. It really does mean a lot to me. I don't have to experience what you went through to appreciate it.
Every time you say something, it brings up another thing. Yeah, I don't want to drag it so long that people are bored with it. But that, you know, I get a lot of people on Facebook that talk about, you know, they'll complain about, oh, I stepped on that Lego, or I have to pick up his shit. You know, I got to do this, I got to do that. Let me tell you something, man. It took me 6 years to clean up my van, because I knew that once I picked up Austin changed his clothes that night into his basketball uniform, and his shoes and his pants were laying on the floor. He had a baseball in the back on the floor. He had a mitt in the back seat. He had toys that he played with as he was going along all over the place. And I knew that once I picked that stuff up,
It made it real.
it was the last time I'd ever do it. So I didn't do it. I didn't want to lose those fingerprints on the dashboard. So I just didn't dust it. I didn't want to lose the basketball that was sitting on the floor, the baseball, the mitt, his clothes that were sitting there. 6 years. And it was because the van broke down and I had to get rid of it and buy a new vehicle. Was finally I cleaned it out. And I knew for the longest time I would go in the bathroom and pick the toilet seat up. No one was, because there was no one in there to leave the toilet seat up anymore. Those things that piss people off, you miss them.
Yes.
When they're not there. When it's the only reminder you have left of your kid, you miss them. I hated the school bus because he wouldn't stop at my front door anymore. I got mad at him. I was, all those things, little things that people complain about, I want them to appreciate the fact that they still get to do it.
Yes.
Because it's hard. But you're welcome. Sorry, I keep dragging this.
No, you're good.
I could tell you so much more stuff, but I'm not. I don't want to. I hope that we came across it in a way that helped you and help others see that the outlet that people use in MMA. I think that, or even in boxing, I see a lot of people. The people that become successful, there's always a story behind them. There's a pain inside their heart, and that's why they fight. And for some reason, I think almost every fighter has that.
Yes.
Every fighter has something that they deal with, and their release is in that cage.
Yes.
And it helps them continue to live life for some reason. I don't know why, but so actually I do know why. Some people turn to drugs and alcohol and they never change. And the people that turn to fighting can get rid of that.
Yes.
This is their drugs and this is their alcohol. When I was in Long Beach one time, I found this, there was a homeless guy that was living underneath the bridge. And I sat, and this was after I lost my son. And my sister lives in Long Beach, by the way, and that's why I was visiting. So I sat there and talked to him and I asked him, I wanted to know his story. And he used to be a doctor, but he lost his wife and 3 kids. And he said he just could never recover. He couldn't ever deal with life again after that. And this was his life now. All because of that. So some people, they're only out, and way to move forward is the cage.
Yeah. Is there anything else that you want to share? Is there do you have a Facebook group or something that people can join?
There is a choking game support group, and it's choking game and suicide prevention. There's actually several of them, but there's a couple that I usually stay on, and that keeps me in touch with everybody new that's coming in. and all of the new, it gets hard sometimes. Every once in a while I have to pull away from it because literally every week there's a child, every week. And the thing is, it's like, when are people going to realize it's not something new? It's been going on too long, and we all need to, the whole world really does need to step in and reach out and try to make people realize it can happen to anyone. And it's not, people are looking at the kids that are getting beaten, and kids that are, parents are drug users and abusers, and they're looking at them as the kind of kids that would do something like this. And it's not. Those kids are strong. They don't depend on their parents. Yeah. They're not happy. They've learned to deal with life. It's not the kids that are dying are the good kids, are the happy kids, are the kids that you would never in a million years dream that you would walk into your bedroom and find them hanging from a doorknob or from their closet, or whatever it is some of these parents are dealing with finding their children. And whether it be they were acting out in the moment or trying to get a little high from the choking game, or whether it was an actual, I can't deal with this in the moment kind of thing, whatever it was, there needs to be some kind of awareness in that, so that people can look for the reasons, look for the causes, and look for, okay, he's upset at this moment. Let's pull him through this together. Yeah. Even if it's something little.
Yes. We have to.
It doesn't matter. Austin that night, he was upset. His teacher was upset at him for some reason, and whether or not it was something stupid, whether or not that's what was going on in his head, I don't know. We had just got home from basketball. It seemed like a normal day. I don't know. And I'll never know. And that's the hardest part, is you'll never know. There's no, he went to his bedroom, seemed fine. I had his best friend with me, Chris, and all I did was run him home. It was about 8:00 at night, and Chris had gone to basketball with us. I picked both boys up from school, took them to basketball, took them to my house, dropped Austin off so he could eat, do his homework, and then I ran Chris home. And I knew something was wrong because when I on my way to take Chris home, I pulled over, and I got this weird feeling in my heart. And Chris said, "What are you doing?" And I said, something's wrong. I need to go back. Something's wrong. And he said, "No, this is fine." And I go, "No, something's wrong. I can feel it." And he nagged at me. "I got to get home. I got to do this, got to do this." So I ignored it, and I kept going. And I tried calling Austin on the phone. He wasn't answering, because I could just feel that something was off. I could feel it in my heart. And I dropped him off. I turned around. I stormed home. And sure enough, I walked around the corner, ran into the bedroom, and there he was. And that's another thing, listen to your gut.
Yes.
When your gut tells you something's off, it's off. Listen to it. Don't let anyone else let you ignore that. But anyways, okay. We can do this forever. So people are going to get bored, and they're going to shut this video like, "I'm done listening to this."
Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. And I hope we get to talk again.
Sure. Anytime you want to. I appreciate that. Hopefully I'll let you know when my next fight is coming up.
Yes.
And if it's a hometown fight, which I'm pretty sure it's going to be, or jiu-jitsu wise, whatever's going on, I'll let you know and keep you updated.
Yes, please. That would mean a lot to me.
Okay.
Yes. Thank you.
All right.